Hello arty peoples and welcome to another episode of Jerry's Live. My name is Emmy Klein and I'm your host this evening, and today we have a really fun class planned for you, so I'm very excited. Today's show is all about pastels, all the different types of pastels that are out there. So I'm going to go through, and since there are so many different brands and everything, I tried to just stick within one specific brand just because when you start branching off into there's a lot of product out there. So I wanted to just show you the different types of pastels within the Mungyo line. So that's the one that we're going to really be focusing on today. So if you are interested in anything I'm going to be showing you today, make sure to go to the website JerrysArtarama.com and type in today's class code, which is down here on the screen in case you need to reference that later. But today's code is JL278. So JL278. If you type that in the search bar, the teacher's cart should come up, and then that way you can find all the products there and check it out. So within the pastel line, there are a lot of different types. I figured we could start with oil pastels first because just there are different levels within that, even just that alone. So I have 3 different kinds here on the table with me, and I just figured I would swatch everything onto a nice neutral gray paper. This is the Fabriano Tiziano paper. Is that how you pronounce it? Pronunciations. So Fabriano Tiziano, which is just a nice pastel paper. You can use it for oil pastels, but there's one on here that is a little bit different, so I wanted to show you that too. So first and foremost, all I did was grab like the smaller sets just because I didn't want to give you an overwhelming amount of color options. So each one of these Mungyo brands has about 12 to maybe 15 colors within them, but I wanted to show you the different levels that are within that line. So oil pastels first. So this is essentially the binder within the pastels is an oil. Not the same kind of oil as an oil paint. Very different oils. The oils within this is a type of oil that technically does not dry. Like whereas an oil paint dries through oxidation, which is like the exposure to air. So as it is exposed to air, it solidifies and forms this like really firm, very solid, very flexible kind of material. That's an oil paint. This oil is not a drying oil. So that means it technically is not going to cure and solidify like an oil paint would. So that does mean technically your oil pastels are never dry. But you know, that's not a terrible thing. That's why when it comes to framing them after you're done, the best thing to do is just put it under glass. That way dust and everything can't get to it. It's protected. No one can swipe it on accident and bump into it and smear your oil pastels. But I believe I have a couple pastels that I did for a pastel show ages ago. The little beach sunset, I actually touched it the other day and it definitely smudged. So it's an oil pastel. It's going to smudge. Yeah. But I wanted to show you just a couple different colors here. So you want to go to that overhead camera, then I can swatch out a couple. So I have right here, this is the Mungyo Oil Pastels, and then this is the Artist Soft Oil Pastels. So we're going to ignore this for right now. We'll get to that, I swear. These two are same brand, but difference in price. I think this one's maybe about $3. This one's maybe about $6. But this is the more professional level of oil pastels. So if I actually take both lids off, you can see colors are pretty much identical, which is great because if you're starting with this and you realize that oil pastels are really something that you love, you can then upgrade to a more professional level, and they will work together, not a problem. And then you can have a little bit of a better product that is transferable within the color range, which I quite love. But let's pick a color. Anybody?
Green.
Green? Light green or dark green?
Emerald green.
Emerald green. Why did I not know that by now? So this is actually deep green, technically.
There is no teal.
No, there is no teal. But you can make teal by layering. That's how oil pastels really work. So if I go quite lightly with my the pressure with my hand, I can get a lighter shade where it's kind of skating across the surface of that paper. But as I press harder, I can get a more solid coverage, right? Now this is still not the more professional level. This is a really, really solid, I don't want to say even student grade because it's kind of like right in that mid-range, whereas this is professional and this is like a step above student grade, really, because it's a very, very solid pastel. Now, since you said teal, I'm going to have to transition to blue. So we're going to have a nice teal in the middle, right? So, same thing. If I were to very lightly, with a light hand, start going over that and then darken it as it goes over here. Adding a little bit more pressure on this side and then lightening it up as I go over here. And then if you really want to get a solid coverage where even all that paper is not showing through, this is how I tend to blend my oil pastels. There are a lot of different ways that you can do that. This is just one of the ways that I do it. So it's almost like painting, but you're doing it in layers. You can also take blenders like a Easy Wiper rag, which is very easy. I tend to just wrap it around my finger and you can get that blend to be a little bit more transitioned. So it's very soft and it's very easy to blend out. Very easy, right? But the cool thing about this, because it is pastel, you can scrape back into it. Do I have anything actually to scrape back in? Maybe.
Need something?
I have a razor blade, but that might be a little rough for the paper. Yeah, can I get a palette knife actually? That might be even perfect. So
in the meantime,
yeah, we have a question.
Do these need to be smudged for the painting to be complete, or can you just leave them?
No, you actually do not at all. Here, this will be perfect. You do not have to smudge this at all. So like, for instance, if I were to do, let's say like an eyeball, right? This is going to be a very rough eyeball, okay? There's that. There's my eye, right? And if I start, this is not going to be a realistic eyeball, just so we all are fully aware with the colors. I'm just going to go a little ham on the color, you know. If I decide that I don't want to smudge this at all, I don't have to. So, I am going to actually give you the white eye, which is usually never white, technically. Quick little eyeball. So,
Do these pastels smell?
I mean, they have a sort of, it's really not like,
I think they smell as much as like crayons do.
they smell like crayons.
Right.
Yeah, that's exactly kind of what's in my head. Crayons would be the,
Like wax.
yeah, like waxy crayons. And that's the thing is like some oil pastels have those additional add-ins to give them a different consistency and body. This is where I didn't want to get into like all the different brands just because that is very brand specific. Sometimes it can change from brand to brand. So it's one of those things that like it really depends. So if I don't want to blend and I decide that I want that to be my pastel eyeball, let's give it a green eye. Why not? It's a very limey green kind of color. Maybe we darken that. That's very, very bright. So I didn't actually smudge this at all, but they layer on top of each other very easily. And if I want to just add a little bit of like pop of We're gonna give it some eyelashes, why not?
While you're doing that, we've got lots of questions over on YouTube about toxicity.
All right, so the toxicity of pastels, specifically the oil pastels, because we're on that right now, well, we can actually cover that in any kind of pastel in general. So every single pastel you have, now this came in a pack, right? A whole pack. It should be on the packaging. It should also be on each individual pastel because this has the wrapper on the outside. And what you're looking for is this right here. So let me actually hold that way up here. Sorry, there's a glare. That AP, that right there, the AP certification means that that is non-toxic. So that means since it's on the package, every single one of these pastels that's in this package is non-toxic. That also means that it should be right here on the label as well. Now, whenever it is actually has a toxicity thing, instead of seeing AP, you'll see the letters CL. So when you see CL, that means that there is an indication that there is something within that pastel that might be hazardous to your health, and you need to be more aware of what you're doing. So packaging and each individual thing, individual pastel, no matter what brand you get. So I would like to say that all of the Mungyo, I can double check that as I go through them, but I can tell you for right now, both of these are AP certified non-toxic. It's right here in the corner and it's on the packaging, and I know for sure that all of these are absolutely non-toxic.
Which of those two did you say was the more professional?
The Artist Oil Pastels. So
Side note on that toxicity thing.
Yes.
Please don't eat your art supplies. Please.
yeah,
don't
never
take
eat your art
precautions.
supplies. Never ever.
When used appropriately.
Yeah. When I say the toxicity of your art supplies, that means like getting it on your skin, whether or not it's smudged on your clothes or whatever it may be. When it has that AP certified non-toxic toxicity level, you don't have to be as aware. If you have a CL certification, it's not that it's going to be absolutely the world's end that you use them. It's just you have to be aware. Don't try not to get it on your skin because that is a toxic thing that can absorb into your bloodstream. But you have to absorb it into your bloodstream for it to be a problem, which I'll get to the other pastels where that is concerned as well. But between the two of these, and I've just been using this one right here, which is, again, not a student grade, but it's like a step up, but it's not a professional. This is a professional, sorry, this is a professional. This is like a mid-grade. So they're really solid pastels. Let me toss these back into here because I wanted to, oh, palette knife. You can scratch back into them, which are super fun. Which I don't know if you guys can see that little scratchy scratch. Maybe if we go to, ooh, can we go to that side view? I might be able to show you on this a little bit. I don't know if it's in the right spot. There we go. Let's do it this way, right? I'm just using a palette knife. You can use whatever is easiest for you. Toothpicks are fun as well. They work really well on this process, but you can scratch back into that. So if I wanted that texture of the eye, maybe I do this, right? So it gives you just a really subtle texture. And the little like, these little bits will come right back off, not a problem. But that is oil pastels in that one specific pack. So if we go back to the overhead view, I can show you in comparison this one. So we're going to start with the same exact colors, right? It's just a little bit deeper and it has a little bit more pigment. And there's something about the way that it feels. It's just a little bit softer, and that's hard for me to show you on camera. But it's the way that it goes down onto the paper is just a little bit more satisfying, and I feel like the colors are a little bit brighter too. I hope that's coming across on camera. Give it a thumbs up if you can see that. So I'm going to do a little bit of a transition here like I did down there. So the layering on this is so easy. It almost feels like, it's not the consistency of lipstick. It's harder than lipstick, but it feels buttery. I don't know how else to describe that. We have a question?
Yes. So you're using the Fabriano Tiziano paper.
Yes.
But if we don't have that exact one, what are good characteristics to look for if we're using oil pastels or water-soluble pastels? Or is it different?
Okay, so each pastel you can use on so many different surfaces. You can use the oil pastel on canvas, you can use it on paper, you can use it on, I do have a watercolor paper here in a minute that I want to show you because we have a water-soluble oil too. But it's, when it comes to you doing oil pastels onto, specifically oil pastels onto paper, it's whatever is going to feel best for you. Now, granted, I'm using a traditional oil pastel. I'm not adding water to this. And I'm going to show you why I'm not adding water to this in just a minute, because I do have these that I've been not talking about. These are the same brand, Mungyo, but these are the oil pastels that are water soluble. I'm not going to be adding water, and I will on here, and I'll show you why. It's not the best in the world, but I'm going to add water to this paper, but this is not the paper I would suggest using these on if you are intending to add water. The reason why is because the paper is not really great for adding water, but I did want to show you a little bit of like blending with this as well. Let me scooch this over here. Maybe I can pop that up top. And I dropped my palette knife. So again, eyeball. Just something so you guys can see me doing a little bit of blending. Oh gosh, which colors did I use on things? I used a lot of orange. So again, it's like you can do a lot of layering with these, because even though my lines are blue, that orange is just gonna pop right back out. And it layers so beautifully that even though orange and blue are opposite on the color wheel, it technically is making mud, but it's still just so soft and subtle there that it's like, it's really quite lovely. So I just wanted to add a couple of different colors, just like I did down here, so you can see really the difference in the color shifts. Again, the colors are very, very similar, but they're slightly different between the two levels. And then what else did I use down here? Green for the eye. I think I got blue, more blue in here. It's like the eye fold. There was that. Let's add a little bit of that darker green. And this is how quickly it can cover. Like that's a solid layer of the light green. And just by going over that, I could very easily blend it out too. Like this moves so fast around the paper that it's just super easy to use.
Do you ever sharpen your pastels?
No, I don't. So what I have done in the past, although, all right, I should say, I never sharpen my oil pastels. Because if I need a sharp edge, what I'll do is I'll just flip it over and use the other side. Or I will break it in half and then I'll have another sharp edge. So usually I don't actually break my pastels, and I normally don't either do anything like, especially like the softer pastels that are the other kind, not the oil pastels, the other ones. which we'll get into, those, there are people that subscribe to the idea of you should always break your pastels. I don't, just because I don't see the purpose in doing that, unless I'm looking for a hard edge kind of a thing. So that's the only time. Like that, it's just going on so fast. And so even though I might have solid black, if I take that white, so whenever I'm doing like a white highlight, if I just do like a solid like wiggle and then pick it up, it'll give me a solid white. And then if I can take this palette knife that I dropped on the floor, I can do the same thing. Scratch right back into it. Now the cool thing, that white chunking off there. The cool thing with the pastels is that if I layer colors on top of, like one on top of the other, like I did here. So I scratched through that dark green. What's showing through is not the gray of the paper. It's that light green that I put underneath it. So if you layer your colors like that and then you scratch back through them, you can reveal those first few layers that you've already put down. So that way it kind of almost is like you're carving back into your pastels, if that makes any sense. I hope it does. But yeah, they're super easy to smudge around, but you do not have to smudge them. So same brand, just a little bit brighter, a little bit easier to lay down, a little bit more pigment. But the price difference is not really that far off, which is great. So oil pastels, are we questions? I feel like we probably have questions still.
I've seen you wiping your oil pastels with your Easy Wiper. Is
Yeah.
that to rid them of the other colors that might be on them?
What do you mean?
Clean them essentially.
Oh, you mean like when I do this? Like you see how I have just a little chunk of like some, I think that's dark green or blue. Yeah. You do that. Technically I'm smudging some of my pastel off, but it's cleaning it. So if I have a pastel that I have used, like if I wanted to go back on top of one and do that, I now have a contaminated pastel, even though my line is quite lovely, but I can take it, just wipe it off. And it's the same thing with the other kind of pastels. That's the easiest way to clean it off. It does soften the edges of your pastels, so just FYI on that one. If you want a nice sharp edge, that's one thing that you do need to be aware of. There's a lot of different ways that you can apply this as well. You can actually take this on a palette, chunk it off with a like almost like you're cutting cheese kind of a thing, and just like slice off a chunk of your pastels. And if you were to start working that into your palette with a little bit of linseed oil, you can now almost paint with it. But you are adding linseed oil, which is a drying oil, so it is kind of almost teetering into oil painting. So that is one thing to kind of be aware of. Now the last oil that I have, and actually I realize I'm gonna have to take this other sheet out from underneath or I'm gonna ruin it. So the last oil pastel that I have are these water-soluble ones. So I'm going to just do a little flipsies. How about that? We'll do this down here. So if I open this up, again, very similar colors. They're not exact, but you do get like a light green, a dark green. You get more of like a magenta and a red. Like there's a slight shift. So like these have more of like the peachy apricot kind of colors, whereas like this one does not. But this one is water soluble, so it's so much fun. All right, so we're gonna do the same thing just like we would any normal pastel, right? You can use these just like any normal oil pastel. And I started with the dark green. So, same exact thing. I can do dark green to a dark blue. And then as I'm getting closer to the other color, I'm starting to lift the pressure just to get, it's technically called optical mixing because I'm putting a layer of the green and then a layer of the blue, and where they're kind of mixing together almost like a grid kind of pattern, or they're probably mixing a little bit on the paper too. It's optically making your brain go, that's kind of a blue-green, which is really fun. Similar to like if you were to use, what is, not charcoal, colored pencils. That. Listen, I've been moving.
It's trick used in fabric a lot too.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, fabric, the weave, same thing. But yeah, no, just fair warning though, I have been moving, so like I'm very tired, so. Okay, so I have my blue and my green, right? Same, just like any other normal oil pastel, I can smudge them and kind of get a little bit of a better transition. Again, they move around super easy. It is now on my finger, very easily removed. Again, also AP certified non-toxic, which is somewhere on the packaging. I think it's, might be on the bottom. I don't want to flip this over, but where is the, it's not on the thingy. I do know 100% though, these are AP certified non-toxic. I don't know where the label is. It should be on here, but I can tell you it is because I've literally contacted the
I'd be on the outer band and we just don't have a wrong one.
yeah, because it's also, it comes with like a thing that slides on here. It might have been on that I might have thrown it away, but I can tell you I have looked at this specifically, and I know 100% sure all of them are AP certified non-toxic. Anywho, so since this is a water-soluble oil pastel, I have water. And this is why I wouldn't specifically use this, like, it's pastel paper. It's very thin. It's made for pastels. It's not made for water. But it does react very easily and moves around and almost turns into like a watercolor. This is why I don't use this paper. Granted, it's also on a gray paper, so you're getting the paper itself. Like if I use a clean brush with just water, it gets darker, which hopefully you guys can see that. It's darker. So you're seeing the water absorbing into the paper as well as like the color moving around. Now, I want to show you a better option for that. If you want to use water-soluble oils, use some kind of a paper that, you know what, I'm going to just shove this down here. That's fine. So use a paper that's made for water media. We have these the New York Central watercolor blocks that are lovely, 100% cotton, so it really absorbs your water quite well, and it's made for watercolor, so you can use that for both, but it also won't buckle on you because all sides are glued down, so you're not going to have to worry about that like weird shift. But if I were to take the same thing, now this is the cold press, so it has a little bit of a texture. If you don't want that texture, you can get something like a hot press paper that is a little bit smoother and it doesn't have as much of a pronounced texture on it. But again, a lot of pressure. And then I'm lifting it off. I also really love the shape of this pastel. It's very satisfying to get like a big area of color down. Then if I take that blue, optically mixing, and then I'm going to get a lot of blue over here. And then switch back and forth a little bit just to kind of get that transition a little bit nicer. If I want to, I can take my finger and blend it out a little bit, just like I would any normal pastel, or oil pastel specifically, right? Take my water. It's so satisfying how quickly this picks up. And so now you can do all kinds of things with this. And what's great is that if I let this dry, I can then go on top of it with more water-soluble pastels. Or if I wanted to, I can even take a pastel. I think it's dipping it into water gives you almost like a fun little like water kind of moment. It's really, really great. Watery marks. You can also put down water and then start going into it. This is also technically still a wet pastel, but there's a lot of things you can do with this. It's really, really great. If you also are a calligrapher or somebody who likes to use it in this manner, it's a little bit more subtle because it is still an oil pastel, but this would give you a definite subtle coloring, which is, I hope you guys can see that on there. It's there. There it is. So it's a little bit more of a soft coloring kind of a thing, but this is a really, really, really fun process to use. Yes, we have questions.
If you use the water-soluble oil pastels as an underpainting, could you go over it with regular, like, or not regular, but soft pastels?
Yeah.
To complete your painting?
So I had a show where I did watercolor as my kind of first wash for like I think it was that rustic kind of funky door that I did, almost like a rainbow color of like a door. Do you remember? Yeah, Katie remembers now.
Mm-hmm.
And then once it dried, I did pastels on top. I did soft pastels. But that's the cool thing with these is that you could do your first initial layer. You can almost completely break down the oil pastel with water, just like I did there. So like that was a solid layer. So like the layer of pastel that was there is now not as dark. It's more of like a wash of watercolor. And so then you can take that, break down your pastels, even if you just want to like quickly knock in maybe like a little bit of yellow here, and then get my brush clean. Do a little bit of a wash where I'm mixing it in, you know. There's a lot of things you can do with this that is very adaptable for your artwork. No matter what it is that you do, portraiture, landscapes, still life. Like this is a really fun product for a lot of different things. And then, yeah, if I let this dry, I think this is dry over here. Let's go with the purple. Wonder if this is, no, this is violet. I don't have to say the word that I can't say. Then I can go back on top of it and I can make marks straight on top of that. And if I were to activate the purple, then I'm getting almost like washes of watercolor where they're now also mixing optically because I have layers, which is so satisfying. Yes, questions?
YouTube would like to know, in what context would you prefer the water-soluble oil pastel over just using watercolor, for instance?
That is entirely personal preference. If you are somebody who likes to do a mixed media kind of feel, if this appeals to you, this is something that's going to appeal to you as an artist. But I mean, it's just a different way of applying your materials, and it's a different way of experimenting and laying down marks. Now, this is something that would be really, really great with like a mixed media, almost abstract kind of fun mark making process. That would be something that would lend really well to these. If you decided that you wanted to experiment with landscapes, you know, that would be something that would be really fun that you could, you know, very, very easily have like, there's the tree, or bush, and then just want to lay down some colors, you know, and you just want to pop in a little bit of darkness of the blue, and then maybe I want to give the sky a little bit more of a wash, and I'm granted I'm going around my, ignore this side, but maybe I don't want to completely saturate my foliage because I think that looks more like a tree. You know, it's just one of those things that, like, if this is going to work for you, it's going to work for you. And it's not like watercolors aren't possible. to be doing this process. I mean, it's just a different process, really. It's just fun. It's a fun product. And I mean, let's be honest, us artists, we have to have fun, right? So that is the water-soluble oil pastels. And I believe they have sets that are larger than 12 colors as well. What do they come up to? 24, 48? I can't remember. But there's a variety of colors with this, which is really, really fun. And, you know, very, very fun with a mixed media process. So I'm going to get this out of the way. I'm not going to have my water go far, just FYI, because now I want it to move into a different kind of pastel, which is more of a soft pastel. So I wanted to start off with something that's a little bit more budget friendly. It's still a really solid pastel, but these pastels, unlike the oil pastels where the binder is like an oil mixed with your pigment and possibly some waxes depending on the brand, this is typically speaking a clay based. So I believe it's like kaolin clay mixed with pigment. Again, they could have some other additives with this. It just depends on the brand, but usually you should be able to find that, not a problem. You have a question?
Those sets come in 12, and then there's an assorted set of 24 and a pearl set of 24.
Ooh, that's right, the pearl set. I forgot. There's pearlescent colors that come in the water-soluble pastels. They're really fun. So it's like, it's got the mica flake in there so that it shimmers as you use it. But yeah. So the oil pastels that are water soluble come in 12, 24, and then also the pearlescent ones. So back to the soft pastels, because there's a soft pastel and then there are a semi-hard pastel. So these are, and I'm sorry, I'm trying to get the glare off of the packaging. We have a lot of lights up here so you guys can see me and what I'm doing, but it sometimes gives me a bit of a glare on my pod. So the semi-hard and the soft pastel are exactly what you would think. They're both clay-based. This is just softer than this. So that's the main thing, the main difference between them. They should still have a good amount of pigment in them. And the semi-hard pastel, for me personally, I think of these as like my underpainting layers, where it's a little bit harder to lay down. It's better for me when I'm sketching something out and trying to place things within my composition. This is kind of like my very first step when it comes to a pastel. Now the soft pastels are my next step because of them being softer. They lay down color a lot easier than this, so it almost becomes like a painting at that point, which is really, really fun. Now I will get into the semi-hard pastels at the end here, but with the soft pastels, again, this is all within the same brand of Mungyo. I have several different options because these, and I'm sorry, this staple is driving me nuts. They staple the lid on it. I had to pull that off, sorry. So I have a couple different sets here because they come in a different sets. So this is the Artist Pastel. This is the Soft I'm sorry, this is a little confusing. This is why I wanted to physically show you the differences, right? This is the for Artists Soft Pastels. This is Soft Pastels for Artists. I didn't name these, I'm sorry. And then these are the Artist Soft Pastels. This is why I'm showing you within the sets of which one you're gonna get. So for right now, I'm gonna start off with this. This is the more kind of beginner friendly, people that don't wanna, you know, if you're not sure if pastels are for you, this is a great set to start off with. So let's do the opposite of the blue and green. We'll go red to orange, how about that? So this is, like I said, budget friendly. Let me start, you know what, I'll do what I did last time and I'll start with my budget friendly down here. How about that? So this one comes in a square, which is quite nice because then you can get all kinds of sharp edges, which is really, really great. This, and yes, Katie just realized that I'm probably gonna have pastels all over my arm because I'm going up. We're not gonna talk about that. So it's really easy to lay down a lot of color, right? And then when I start going into each color, you can do the same thing like I did with the oil pastels, is you can switch back and forth between them and very lightly go over them. Now this red is just incredibly pigmented, so I don't need a whole lot to go back and forth, but this is what happens with soft pastels. You got pastels on ya. Since they're AP certified non-toxic, which it says right here, there's the, sorry with the glare, there it is. So that is an AP certified non-toxic. It's on the packaging, which means every color within this whole thing is definitely non-toxic. So I can touch this without a problem, right? I can blend it with my fingers. If you are a tactile person like me and this is the way that you want to blend, it's very easy to do so. But the thing is that if you're somebody who doesn't like to get your hands dirty like this, then you definitely can use quite a few pastel like shaper, or not shaper, pastel shaper is like a cup thing. It's the, what are the tools called? Pastel blenders. There's a whole line of them. What are they called? I'm sorry.
Little silicone ones, or?
There's the whole, like, we have a set with them. I'm sorry, I cannot remember what that's called. You get a different kind of applicators. There's sponges, there's a brush. You can always brush this out with that. That's the set that I'm talking about. I cannot remember what it's called. I'm sorry. I cannot believe I didn't even think to pull it on for the show. So Katie's gonna grab that for a minute. And I know we're gonna have a ton of questions. Before we get into questions, the one thing I do want to absolutely emphasize with soft pastels. You see all this dust that has collected here? To remove the dust, you tap your artwork into a trash can. You never blow. Never ever blow that off your paper. The reason why is because this is pigment. It's AP certified non-toxic, but this is still pigment. And it is now dust. And if you blow this into the air, you are now dispersing your pigments floating around in the air. That is a bad idea. You never want to eat your art supplies. And if you blow this into the air, you are now making it breathable. So you don't want to breathe in a cloud dust of pastel pigments, no matter if it's certified non-toxic or not. Just please be aware of that. So tap your art supplies and get them clean that way, or tap your paper and get it that way, but don't blow it. So I know we have questions though, so whilst you guys are asking questions, I'm going to do a little doodle over here with my little eyeball, just like I did with the other ones. But questions?
Yes.
I'm sure. Yes.
Back to the water-soluble ones.
Okay.
With pastels like this, can you do light over dark in ways you can't do with watercolor? With the water-soluble ones specifically? Yeah, that's the really cool thing with oil pastels is that if you're working light to dark or dark to light, that's the cool thing is that you can kind of transition back and forth between them. But keep in mind, if you want that watercolor kind of look to them, you're not going to be, you still have to approach it like a watercolor. I hope that makes sense, because you're never going to be able to get back to the white of your paper. You're going to have to use an opaque white pastel to get the white back in. So that's what I mean is you can transition between those different things. Other questions? Yes. Are the water-soluble pastels artist grade?
I'm sorry, you said the water-soluble pastels
are
artist
artist
grade.
grade.
Yeah, absolutely. These are really highly pigmented. Like you saw how much pigment that came onto the paper. So here it's the artist grade. This is a professional grade. And then here's your water soluble. So it's a lot of pigment that came or was put onto the paper. So, and I can go back and forth on that. I didn't actually draw an eyeball, which I just realized, but that's okay. We don't need to do that. We did trees.
Can you use pastels over acrylic paint?
What type of pastels over acrylic paint? That's so yes, you can use pastels over acrylic paint. Now when it comes to soft pastels, yeah, you can technically. The only thing with that is that acrylic paint tends to have a slick surface. So this might not go down like you would want it to, because it might dig into the surface of your acrylic paints. Now, if you really let it cure and let your acrylic paints dry, because they almost have like that plasticky, that's essentially what it is. It's like, it's a acrylic polymer, so it's going to have like a plasticky film essentially to it. So let it dry. What you can do is go over top of it with like a clear matte medium, something to give you a little bit of tooth, and then this would go down a little bit easier. Now the oil pastels will absolutely go on top of acrylics. Now before you ask, no, you don't want to put acrylics on top of oil pastels, because remember, oil and water, they're gonna repel each other. So you can put oil pastels on top of acrylics, but the acrylics will not go on top of oil pastels unless they're water soluble, because that one's been modified. So super fun. Do we have another question? Oh,
Yes.
Yes. All right.
If you use brushes with this, like when you use the brush with the water soluble, how would you clean it?
Just like I would with normal acrylics. I would just clean most of it off into my bucket of water. And because I'm not actually over in my the area that has a sink, our little artist sink, I can't actually wash that with soap, but I would wash it with soap if need be, you know. For the most part, I can just knock most of that off with water. But yeah, if you're going to store it long term, soap is a great thing.
Is there a reason you picked gray paper?
I wanted a neutral color so you guys can really see the colors.
So you can use it on any color?
You can use it on absolutely any color paper whatsoever. Purple, pink, blue, gray,
and then
beige.
For now, my last question
Yes.
is, can you use any type of pastels on 140-pound hot press watercolor paper? Is there any that you wouldn't recommend using?
No, you can use anything really. The oil pastel? No, you can use oil pastels onto the watercolor paper. Now, I know your face, Katie's face right now is like she's deep in thought, and I know you guys can't see that. So the reason why I believe Katie is doing that is because of typically you don't want to put oils onto paper, but this isn't the same kind of oil as a oil paint, because that tends to degrade your paper. But this is made for like. It's made for paper.
That one I wouldn't worry about.
No, I mean like any oil
yeah.
pastels are really made for
true.
paper. So like
Worried about it.
it's just a little different. Yeah, it's the oil might leach out a little bit is what you're talking about. So
it should be fine, but test it.
That's true. Yeah, we can always test. That's the thing. That is always an option. This is why, you know, it's very possible to just get a little scrap piece of paper or cut it in half or cut off a little bit and give it a test and see kind of how it works and whether or not, you know, it works for you specifically. So I'm going to try and keep the same sort of color. Again, same thing. I had a little bit of color, which my hands are dirty, so I'm getting it all over my pastel. This is how I would clean off my pastel. But these are really easy to blend on the paper, not a problem. I'm just not being very precise with my locations of where I put my colors. It's more of an impressionistic eye until I add the black. Right, which we can do now. How about that? And again, if I want a sharp edge, I'm using the edges of this square pastel to my advantage. And let's, a little bit of that eyelid action. And then for the highlight, do a couple little boops. Right, highlight. Just realized that got real red.
Allergies.
There is the allergies, yeah. The pollen season is among us. But this is one of those things where you can really blend it out quite easily. You don't have to blend it out like I just did. I just layered on top of each other. And if you want to blend from one to the other, you absolutely can take a tool, take your fingers, whatever it may be. Now this is the one thing. If you end up like this, Soho wipes. These clean your hands really fast and very easily. So now I'm not going to contaminate from one to the other. It just comes right off. Right? Like a little eraser. And these are also biodegradable words. But it's non-toxic. It's good for your hands. It's not gonna be any kind of an issue. But this gets the pigments off your hand. If you do want to not get that pigment, the pastel powder all over your hands, you can wear gloves too. It's not a problem. I even believe that they might have pastel holders too nowadays. Now that I think about it. So that was these right here are the soft pastels. This is what I would consider within the ones that I'm going to show you, kind of on the lower end, but it's still really solid pastel. Like it's a really great product. So might as well move along here. So this is the Gallery Pastels for artists, similar to the other ones. This is the smallest set that they had, which was 15. So this one comes in a really lovely fancy box. I love their packaging, especially because if you're like me and love my delivery guys, but man, do they love to kick the boxes or just toss them up on my porch. So this right here is absolutely fantastic for protecting your pastels. Even if I want to take this whole thing out, like the foam, I wouldn't do that right now because it's really packed in there. But this could very easily go into like a storage bin if you need to. But this, I'm going to take... That's right, an HG Concepts drawer organizer, yes. You could even also trim it to be in different sections, which would be a little bit more easy to maneuver around. So this one is the extra fine soft pastel. Because it's, there we go, extra fine. It's hard to get the difference between the different names between them because on the packaging it doesn't say that. But this is the extra fine soft pastel. This one has the AP certification right here on the paper. Every single one of them should have it. And if I remember correctly, where is that? Somewhere on here on the box. It might be, again, might be on the bottom of the box, and I don't want to really flip that over. But it's on every single one of these. These are all AP certified, non-toxic. Mungyo is really great about that. But then here we go. Lift it up. This is just the amount of color. Like, it's very similar, but again, it just goes down so easily. Like, this is a really great product, but like, this is just a little bit better. It feels better. I don't know how to explain that other than like, it feels better just going down. It's smoother.
Question?
Yes.
Can alcohol be used with a brush to liquefy the non-water soluble oil pastels on a canvas or appropriate paper?
Can the rubbing alcohol, like isopropyl alcohol, okay, be used with a brush with the water-soluble oil pastels?
The non-water soluble oil pastels.
Oh, the non-water, okay. Ooh, I have not actually tested that myself. I don't know 100% sure. That would be something that I could absolutely test. Was that on Facebook or YouTube? Because I can go back through and answer your questions. YouTube makes it a little harder because it's a live chat, but I can always put it in the comments for you to see later. That's definitely one of those things that I would have to just do a little test. I have not actually attempted to do that myself, but Again, just like the other one, it blends really, really well. This feels like the pigment and the pastel is just a little bit finer. Whereas like this feels a little bit grittier in feel alone. But you can see like the color is just still very, very brilliant. But I feel like the coverage is a little bit nicer here. And I am breaking it as I try to take it out. That was my bad. I definitely shouldn't have done that with the pastel. I flicked it. Sorry. Okay, so again, the pigment that's immediately there is just so brilliant. Like this was great, really, and then just once you start going from one to the other, it's just, I feel like it's just blaringly so much better, which is crazy to think, you know?
So these that you're using now are the more professional of the...
These are more professional than these, right? Again, orange and blue, opposite on the color wheel. They are optically, or they're mixing here on my paper, but that orange is still incredibly brilliant, which is absolutely lovely. Use a little bit of that red, just like I did the other time.
So, do you, I don't know how to phrase this. We want to talk about fixative sprays for each kind.
Yes.
What do you recommend?
All right, so with soft pastels, let's start, well, all right. Oil pastels are, I feel like, just a little bit easier to answer. Either you don't have to spray fix the oil pastels. You really don't. You can just frame it under glass. Make it easy. It can be UV protected through the glass that you're using. And then your spray fixative that is for pastels. My personal favorite is the Sennelier. The Sennelier makes a spray fixative that is an aerosol can that is made specifically for oil pastels, which is like a very light resin that kind of gives you a little bit of a protective coating, and you can add in more layers on top of it to help in those different the protective layers. Now, like I said, glass, under glass with the framing, and then with these pastels, the soft pastels, or even the semi-hard pastels, because these are the clay-based pastels. Yes, you can use spray fixative. I personally do not like spray fixative because it can change your colors. As soon as that spray fixative hits your pastels, it can shift your colors to either darker or less vibrant, which is an unfortunate truth with pastels. It's just one of those things that, like, it just happens. So with pastels, like the clay-based pastels, the soft pastels, the semi-hard pastels, with those, I recommend just putting them under glass. Now, we have a whole show that Amy did where she went over how to frame specifically for pastels, because there is a way to do it that is kind of to give you a little bit of spacing so that your pastels, as the dust falls over time, it won't collect on the bottom of your like the matting or like the frame, because that's a thing that you do have to be aware of, because it's not technically spray fixed kind of a thing. But that's just one of those things that we have a whole show on. You're more than welcome to go check it out. Amy is a wealth of knowledge as well, so she gave you a really great show with that one. But again, I can very easily blend with my fingers. Oh, I needed the white. That's what I needed. Because this is also blends really well on the paper. Absolutely. Right. And then again, if I need to just wipe that off, it gets clean so easily. But oh yeah, I need the black one, don't I?
That episode is JL79.
JL79, how to frame your pastels.
And charcoal artwork.
And charcoal artwork. Okay, that's what it was. I was like, I feel like there was another thing in there.
We used every spray fix we had for that episode.
Yeah.
Everyone.
Every spray
Every
fixative.
piece of artwork in the studio was fixed before that show.
I love it.
It smelled real good.
And also, if you're using spray fixative for your artwork, go outside or in a very, very ventilated area, just so you are not breathing in all those fumes, because that is a toxicity thing.
And shake.
And shake it like
Shake
the
it.
maracas that you never had. Just have a party, shake it, and then when you think you're done shaking it, shake it some more. Because spray fixative definitely needs to be shaken, not stirred. Yes.
Can you frame an oil pastel picture under glass right after you're done?
Yeah, absolutely. You can absolutely frame any pastel picture. You do not have to spray it whatsoever. You do not have to wait for it to cure. You do not have to do anything. All you have to do is just put it in a frame and it should be good to go. That is the cool thing about this is that, that's one thing. It's always going to smudge on you. But that's the cool thing about the pastels is that it is such an immediate kind of, thing that you can absolutely finish a piece, frame it, sell it immediately. You don't have to like oil paint, wait for those to cure and then frame it. It's just one of those things that it's done instantly.
Do the oil pastels present the same dust problem as clay-based?
No, oil pastels do not have dust because they're oil-based. Because this is a clay-based product. That's why you get the dust, the little dusty dust. But it's not terrible. It really isn't. It's very containable. Like right now, yes, it's on my hands, but I've been wiping my fingers off on the Easy Wiper rag, so technically it's on my fingers, and again, AP certified non-toxic, so I don't have to worry about this on my hands right now. I can very easily, like, I'm not touching it and smearing it around, like it's not coming off of my fingers. But if I use a Soho wipe or even just wash my hands with soap, it's immediately gone. So it's just one of those things that if you are somebody like Michael Goldstein, who loves to get his hands dirty, just kidding. He really hates getting art supplies on his hands. So that's just one thing that he does not want to do because it's just a tactile thing for him. Now, if you don't mind, you can very easily finish your piece and then wash your hands when you're done. It's very containable, especially if you're not blowing it out into the air because you don't want to do that. Don't do that. But yes, this right here is the extra fine soft pastels, set of 15. They come in really lovely colors. This one's probably my favorite. I didn't even use it, man. It's such a pretty color. Isn't it lovely? Like I just gotta, just a little bit. Just because. It's so pretty. So pretty. It's such a lovely blue. Now again, I use the pastel on other layers and I got a contaminated pastel. All I do is just wipe it on that and then now it's clean. Done. And then I can put it all back into the little, that's so satisfying to like push it back in. Yay. So satisfying. There should be an entire channel just putting them back into the package, right? Anyway, ASMR videos. All right, so that's that pastel. Now, I have the Artist Soft Pastels, which the biggest difference between these and the other ones, that these come in a square, which is just something that, like, if you like that flat edge, that's definitely going to be something that is preferable to you to have. Sharp edges with your pastels where the other ones were round. Now, granted, these come in the same kind of set of 12. So, oh, I forgot I did the red. This is what Katie was talking about, is I'm getting it closer and closer to me, and I'm probably going to lean into it. That's okay, I'm wearing an apron, it's fine. Also, if you get the soft pastels on your clothes, they should mostly wash out, but try not to. All right, so there's the lovely red, that fantastic orange. Again, every single one has that AP certified. It's really hard to see, and I can hold it up to the camera. It's right there. It's a little tiny little AP certified non-toxic, but if you go on our website, everything should be in the tech notes as well, which is a little button that if you push on that, the information for each product should come up. So this one happens to be a little bit brighter. I think that's probably just because of this set comes in a set of 15, so they have a little bit more color variety. So it's not exactly transferable, but it's quite lovely. Again, that red is going to be really strong, and I don't think I'm going to need much to get down there to transition. Yeah. Very easy to do the blends and things like that. Again, you can use tools. The Pastel Shaper has all the tools and stuff, like brushes, all kinds of things to use, which is really fun. Now, how are we doing on time? Because I feel like if I keep drawing little eyeballs, we're gonna run out of time. Okay, we're gonna definitely run out of time if I do that. So, because I have other pastels to show you. So that is, it's very similar, but quite lovely on the colors. I am going to just shift over to the next ones because within this range we do have one more soft pastel, which are the Handmade pastels. So these are still the same really professional level, but they are hand rolled. Literally by somebody's hands rolling them up instead of like being extruded and then chopped by a machine. So still quite lovely on the pigments. They just feel, oh, I'm not even on camera, sorry. They just feel a little bit softer in the feel, whereas like the other ones feel just slightly more dense. This feels almost like you're drawing with like a light fluffy cloud. It's that's the only way I can really explain it, is that it's just like light and fluffy. Not that it's not full of pigment, because it's definitely got a lot of pigment that it can put down. And these are probably one of my favorites to do like landscapes with, because they just go down so easily, so lovely. But they definitely have a huge variety of sets that you can get. This is just the set of 15, and they're just quite fantastic. There's that my favorite color, blue again. What is this called? It's the cobalt blue. Of course it's cobalt blue. And it's not a true cobalt, so don't freak out, but it is just a pretty color. And I believe these also have the AP certified non-toxic. This is the sleeve that we were talking about that it kind of slides into the packaging. The AP certified non-toxic is right here in a lovely gold. So all of them are certified non-toxic. Again, I would draw more with them, but I have more pastels to show you. Now, this is where we get into the semi-hard pastel. Again, when you use these are, again, kind of more on that professional level still. There's your AP certified non-toxic. There we go. A lot of little foam. Again, very well packaged. These are just a little rough because I used them for a pastel show before, but still very pigmented. Now, again, this is the one that I always say I would use as like my underpainting layer, just because it's a little bit harder. The other thing I have done is also gone in and done, like if I wanted to do like little detail lines, because these are also square and they're also kind of a harder, kind of firmer texture. I feel like they can give you those little details like that. Like if you're doing hair or the eyelashes on an eye, like these are really great to get those kind of transitions. But you can very easily picked it right back up, didn't I? And that's just the kind of the way that the semi-hard pastel goes, is that it's a little bit tougher on the paper, but you can definitely smear it around just quite easily. So that's the semi-hard pastel. Again, I could draw an eyeball with it, but I have one last pastel to show you, which technically makes me a slight liar. I said I was going to show you all the pastels within the Mungyo brand, and I did want to show you one last thing, which is Cretacolor. These are pastel pencils. So like I was saying, if you don't want to get pastels on your hands, but you really love the idea of pastels, these are a fabulous option. So it is pastel. It feels a little bit more like the semi-hard pastel in the consistency, but when it comes to being able to draw with them, you can do all kinds of things with them. They're exactly the same thing. You can get a good amount of pigment down, blend it out, but it's in a pencil form. And this is the set of 72. So not only do you get this layer, you also get another layer, which I'm not really good at picking these things up. So hopefully I don't spill all the pencils. Got it, we're good. So you can get the 2 layers and set of 72, which is really, really great. So this is an option for those of you out there that really don't want to get your hands dirty. I also really love to use these in conjunction with the other pastels because then you can get the little detail lines and stuff. Beautiful. So how are we doing on questions real quick? Because I know there are probably more, but any that I need to answer right this second and not go back through the questions.
Can you scrape the last kind you used with the palette neck? Does it work?
The soft pastel? Not really. So do I have, there it is. Let me do this. Flip it back around here so you guys can see the eyeballs. So if I were to do that, you can sort of move it around and kind of scrape it, but it's not quite the same because you don't get those like really striking lines because this is a chalk based. It's more like it's a pastel. It's just like soft and fluffy and it's going to move around. Whereas the other one is an oil base, so it's kind of stick in almost like a crayon. That's why these tools work really, really well as well. So.
And then this is kind of like an overview question for the whole time. Which of these would be best and worst to use in a sketchbook?
Pastels that are soft, I don't recommend in a sketchbook. Because think about it like this. If I were to, now granted, I do have a lot of pastel dust on here right now, so that's going to happen. If I were to close my sketchbook like this, right, and it's in my backpack and it's moving around, right, this is what happens. It will transfer. So soft pastels are absolutely, unless you're spray fixing them as soon as you're done, and then you have to wait for the spray fix to dry and then move on with your day. But then again, it will also shift the colors, kind of a thing. This is not the greatest option. It's just a little bit messy for a sketchbook. Not that you can't use it in a sketchbook, but it also destroys your artwork once you close it. So this is not what I would recommend. Now, oil pastels still technically will smudge. Oh geez, you don't want to do that either because that will poof out some pastels. Sorry. I'm going to put that away so I don't hit it with my hands. But I do have the oil pastels down here. What I can do is the same thing. Close your sketchbook. Like say like I've had a really rough bike ride and it's just shifting my notebook around and all that's getting smudgy. It is going to transfer a little bit, but it's not nearly what happened with the other one. And my sketches are still kind of okay. Like they're not, that's also upside down, that's gonna bug me, I'm sorry. It does have a transfer, so over time, this is gonna get worse, but.
Glycine is your best friend in that.
Yeah, glycine is definitely a better thing to stick in between the pages. That way when you close the glassine in between them, that'll protect both this side of the paper and this one, and will keep your artwork from smudging as much. I hope that answers that question. Yeah. Still gonna smudge, but it's the as much part where it's not gonna be as bad. All right. So is that all the questions? I think they are. So if you do have any more additional questions, feel free to put them in the chat. I will always go back through and answer them, of course, and make sure if you guys want to try out some pastels, give it a whirl. It's definitely a really fun, kind of a messy process, depending on which one you use, but it's definitely such a tactile feel of art supply that it almost brings me back to like when I was a little kid with crayons. Like you feel like you're just really getting back into that, like the fun of making art. So I hope you guys get a chance to try it out. Of course, join me next week because I do have a guest artist on. I'm so excited. It's going to be Jeff Olson. He comes back in. We are going to be talking about transparent oxides in, I believe, oil paint. So it's going to be a very, very oxidey kind of show, which is going to be just all those beautiful, like earthy tones. They're so luscious and lovely. I can't help it. But I hope you guys enjoyed the show. I will see you next week. I'll talk to you later. Bye.